The night Caroline Mercer discovered her husband's betrayal, she was 8 weeks pregnant and practicing how to tell him the good news. Instead, he handed her divorce papers, told her to get rid of the baby, canceled her health insurance at midnight, and walked
Caroline,
out
look
with a
over here.
23-year-old model on his
divorce
arm.
rumors true?
But here is what Grant Holloway
one
did
shot,
not
Caroline.
know. His wife
How are
used
you
to be
feeling
a
right now? What do you
forensic
have to say?
accountant,
Here is the
the kind
evidence
who
you
catches
requested,
criminals for a
Sebastian.
living,
I look forward to our
the kind who
partnership.
knows that
The firm
numbers
appreciates
never
your
lie,
cooperation, Caroline.
even when
We won't
people do.
disappoint you.
Grant thought he
The
was
man sitting
untouchable.
Right there, Grant Holloway,
He thought
is
money and
responsible
power
for this
meant he
crime.
could erase
We have the evidence
anyone
to
who
prove it
became
beyond any
inconvenient.
doubt.
He was wrong. What she discovered in the next 6 months would destroy
They are
everything
absolutely
he
perfect,
built.
honey.
And the final twist? Even I did not see it coming. Stay until the end. Value statement. Before we begin, remember this. Your greatest weapon is not money. It is not connections. It is the truth and the courage to fight for it when everyone tells you to give up. This story will show you exactly how one woman did it. The courtroom fell silent as Caroline Mercer approached the witness stand. Her navy blue dress hugged the curve of her pregnant belly, and her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the wooden railing. Cameras flashed from the gallery. Reporters leaned forward in their seats. And across the room, Grant Holloway sat frozen at the defendant's table, his face drained of color. Caroline's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Your Honor, my husband did not just leave me. He tried to erase me, but I kept receipts. She held up a thick manila folder, and Grant's composure shattered. But this moment did not happen overnight. This moment was built on 6 months of betrayal, survival, and the kind of fight that changes a woman forever. Let me tell you how it began. 6 months earlier, Caroline Mercer stood in her Upper East Side penthouse kitchen, practicing the most important speech of her life. She held a tiny onesie in front of the mirror, rehearsing different ways to tell her husband she was pregnant. Surprise, you are going to be a father. No, too basic. Grant, I have news that will change everything. Ugh, that sounds like a press release. Babe, I am cooking something that takes 9 months. Okay, that is just creepy. She laughed at herself, tucking a strand of honey blonde hair behind her ear. After 5 years of marriage and 3 years of trying, she was finally 8 weeks pregnant. Tonight she would tell Grant over a romantic dinner. Candles, his favorite wine, the whole production. Caroline had been a forensic accountant at a Big Four firm before she married Grant. She had audited billion-dollar companies, caught embezzlers, and testified in federal court. But 3 years ago, Grant had convinced her to leave her career. Focus on us, baby, he had said. You do not need to work. I will take care of everything. And she had believed him. She had traded spreadsheets for dinner parties, depositions for charity galas. She had become Mrs. Grant Holloway, wife of the CEO of Holloway Ventures, one of Manhattan's most prestigious venture capital firms. But lately, something felt wrong. Caroline could not put her finger on it, but her accountant brain never stopped noticing patterns. Grant's late nights had multiplied. His phone was always face down. His smile never quite reached his eyes anymore. That afternoon, while Grant was at the office, Caroline found his tablet on the kitchen counter. The screen was unlocked. A notification popped up from someone named Naomi with a kiss emoji next to her name. Cannot wait for Bali next week. Finally, just us. No more pretending. Caroline's heart stopped. Her fingers moved on autopilot, scrolling through months of messages. Photos of a beautiful young woman with dark hair and perfect cheekbones. Plans for secret getaways. Pet names that made her stomach turn. But the worst was a draft email to Grant's lawyer. Subject, dissolution strategy. Need prenup loophole. C has no income, no assets in her name. Clean break, she gets nothing. Caroline's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the tablet. Her husband was not just having an affair. He had been planning to discard her for months. maybe years, and she had been too blind, too trusting, too in love to see it. She pressed a hand to her belly, where their child was growing. "And I was going to tell him about you tonight," she whispered. For a moment, Caroline allowed herself to crumble. Tears streamed down her face as she sank onto a kitchen stool, her whole world collapsing around her. The penthouse that had once felt like a dream now felt like a gilded cage. But then something shifted inside her, something hard and sharp and determined. She wiped her eyes and picked up the tablet again. Her forensic accountant brain kicked into gear, the same instincts that had once caught a $50 million embezzlement scheme. Screenshot everything. Dates, times, locations. Never confront without evidence. That is Rule 1. She captured 47 messages, forwarded them to her personal email, cleared the sent folder, then she placed the tablet exactly where she had found it and took a deep breath. She would still make the dinner. She would still set the scene. But now she had a different purpose. Her phone would be recording in her purse. At 7:30 that evening, Caroline lit the last candle on the dining table. 2 places set. Grant's favorite steak, medium rare, a bottle of the Cabernet he loved. Everything perfect, everything calculated. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Marcy Thompson. "Girl, why do you sound like you are breathing into a paper bag?" Caroline had accidentally pocket-dialed her during her breakdown. She typed back quickly, "I am fine. Just preparing a romantic dinner." Marcy's response came instantly. "You? Romantic? Last Valentine's you gave Grant a spreadsheet of why he should marry you." Caroline almost smiled despite everything. "It worked. We have been married 5 years. And you still call him by his last name when you are mad," Marcy replied. "Call me later. Something is up. I can tell." Marcy was a paralegal at a family court, and she had the instincts of a bloodhound. But Caroline could not tell her anything yet. Not until she had proof. Not until she had a plan. The penthouse door opened at 7:45. Grant walked in wearing his signature charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. He looked like a CEO from a magazine cover. He looked like the man she had fallen in love with 7 years ago at a charity gala. He also looked like a stranger. But Grant was not alone. Behind him walked a man in his 50s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase. Howard Vance, Grant's corporate lawyer. Caroline's stomach dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. Grant did not comment on the romantic dinner setup. He did not kiss her hello. He simply gestured for her to sit. "Caroline," he said, his voice flat and rehearsed. "Sit down. We need to talk." He slid a stack of papers across the table. The words "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage" jumped out at her from the top page. "I have met someone," Grant continued, not meeting her eyes. "Naomi and I are moving forward. This is the cleanest way." Caroline looked at the papers, then at her husband, then at the lawyer. Her heart was shattering, but her face remained stone. "Clean for who?" she asked quietly. Grant blinked, clearly expecting tears. Hysterics. Begging. Instead, Caroline picked up the papers and began reading. Her accountant brain processed every clause, every number, every trap. "You are offering me $50,000, she said slowly. "One-time payment, no alimony, no asset division. And I have 48 hours to sign." "It is generous," Grant said smoothly. "Considering." "Considering what?" Caroline's voice sharpened. "That I gave up my career for you? That the prenup you made me sign was drafted by your lawyer without independent counsel?" Grant's smile faltered. Howard Vance shifted uncomfortably. "I am not signing anything tonight," Caroline continued, standing up. "And I am getting my own lawyer." Grant's eyes turned cold, a look she had never seen directed at her before. "If you fight this," he said slowly, "I will make sure everyone knows you are unstable. I have doctors who will testify. The threat hung in the air like poison, But Caroline was done being afraid. "Before you go, Grant," she said, her voice steady despite the earthquake in her chest, "you should know something. I am pregnant." The room went absolutely still. Grant's face cycled through shock, then anger, then something calculating and cruel. "That is convenient timing," he said finally. 8 weeks, confirmed by Dr. Patterson. Your doctor." Grant shrugged, already turning toward the door. "Get rid of it, or do not. But do not think this changes anything." Howard Vance cleared his throat nervously. "Grant, perhaps we should discuss—" "There is nothing to discuss," Grant cut him off. "This marriage is over." He paused at the door, delivering one final blow. "Oh, and Caroline, I have already informed HR. You are terminated from the foundation board. Effective immediately. Your health insurance ends at midnight." The door slammed behind them. Caroline stood alone in her perfectly set dining room, candles still flickering, 2 plates of food going cold. The divorce papers lying on the table like a death sentence. She pressed a trembling hand to her belly. "Okay," she whispered to herself, to her unborn child. "Okay. Think. What do you have? What do you know? What can you prove?" She pulled out her phone. The recording was still running. "I have his voice admitting the affair, threatening me, firing me while pregnant. That is something. It was not much, but it was a start. And Caroline Mercer was not going down without a fight." The next 72 hours destroyed Caroline's life piece by piece. Day 1 began at Chase Bank on Madison Avenue. Caroline had woken up on Marcy's couch, having fled the penthouse at midnight with nothing but her purse and a small suitcase. Her first priority was accessing their joint accounts. She needed money for a lawyer, for medical care, for survival. The bank manager, a middle-aged woman with sympathetic eyes, typed Caroline's information into the computer. Then her expression shifted to something uncomfortable. "I am sorry, Mrs. Holloway. This account was closed yesterday. All funds were transferred to a new account in your husband's name only." Caroline's blood ran cold. "That is impossible. It was a joint account. I have signatory rights." The manager shook her head slowly. "According to our records, you signed a release form 3 months ago, removing yourself from all joint accounts. I never signed anything like that." But the manager was already turning the screen to show her a document with her signature at the bottom. A signature that looked exactly like hers. A signature she had never written. "I need copies of everything," Caroline said, her forensic accountant instincts kicking through the shock. "Account closure forms, transfer authorizations, everything with his signature and mine." The manager hesitated. "That is not standard procedure." Caroline leaned forward, her voice dropping to steel. "I am not asking for standard procedure. I am asking for documentation of what appears to be financial abuse. You can provide it voluntarily, or my lawyer can subpoena it. Your choice." She got the documents. But every account told the same story. Checking, emptied. Savings, emptied. The investment portfolio she had helped build transferred entirely to Grant. Credit cards, canceled. Even the household account she used for groceries had been closed. In 48 hours, Grant had erased her financially. Day 2 brought an even crueler blow. Caroline arrived at her OB/GYN's office for her first prenatal appointment, clinging to the hope that at least her body, her baby, was still within her control. The receptionist, a young woman with an apologetic expression, stopped her before she could sit down. "Mrs. Holloway, your insurance was terminated. We will need full payment up front. That is $800 for today's visit." Caroline paid with a credit card Marcy had lent her, her hands shaking. But the real devastation came in the examination room. Dr. Patricia Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s, who had been Caroline's gynecologist for years, entered with a tablet and a troubled expression. "Caroline, I have to tell you something. Given your cardiac history..." Caroline frowned. My what? Dr. Patterson's face paled. Your heart condition. The mild arrhythmia we have been monitoring for 2 years. I do not have a heart condition. Nobody has ever told me about any heart condition. The doctor's expression shifted from confusion to horror. Your husband said he told you. He asked me to monitor it discreetly. He said you were anxious, that knowing would upset you. Caroline felt the room tilt. Grant had known about a heart condition for 2 years. He had instructed her doctor to hide it from her. He had made medical decisions about her body without her knowledge or consent. And now, pregnant and alone, she was discovering the truth from a doctor who looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. I want copies of every medical record, Caroline said, her voice barely above a whisper. Every communication between you and my husband about my health. And I want it documented that he made medical decisions without my informed consent. Dr. Patterson nodded frantically, already pulling up files. Caroline, I am so sorry. I never should have. He said you knew. He said it was your preference to have him handle medical information because of your anxiety. I do not have anxiety, Caroline replied flatly. I have a husband who has been controlling every aspect of my life without my knowledge. Day 3 completed the destruction. Caroline was curled on Marcy's couch, trying to eat toast, despite her churning stomach, when Marcy burst through the door with her phone held out like a weapon. Girl, do not look at Twitter. Too late. Caroline had already seen the notification. She opened the app with trembling finger. Grant's face filled her screen, perfectly posed in what was clearly a professional photo shoot. The headline from page 6 screamed above him. Holloway CEO speaks, my wife's mental health struggles made our marriage impossible. The article was a masterpiece of manipulation. Grant spoke in carefully crafted sound bites about trying to get Caroline help, about her refusal of treatment, about his heartbreak at having to leave. When she told me she was pregnant, he was quoted as saying, I knew I had to protect myself and potentially an innocent child. But the photos were worse. Someone had taken pictures of Caroline leaving the penthouse the night Grant served her papers. Her face was tear-streaked, her hair disheveled, her posture defeated. She looked exactly like the unstable woman Grant was describing. The comments section was a firing squad. Gold Digger finally got caught. She looks crazy in that photo. Good for him getting out. I heard she faked the pregnancy to trap him. Caroline dropped the phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could not pick it up again. Marcy sat beside her, pulling her into a fierce hug. Do not read the comments. Do not ever read the comments. But Caroline barely heard her. The reality of her situation crashed over her like a tidal wave. Grant had not just left her. He had not just stolen her money and hidden her medical condition. He was systematically destroying her reputation, her credibility, her ability to be believed. And she was 8 weeks pregnant with no money, no insurance, no home, and now no reputation. He is going to take everything, she whispered. My babies, my future, everything. Marcy pulled back, gripping Caroline's shoulders. No, he is not. Because you are not alone, Caroline. And because I know someone who has been waiting years for a chance to take Grant Holloway down. Caroline looked up, confused. What are you talking about? Marcy's expression hardened with determination. I am talking about a lawyer named Rebecca Lawson, and she is going to eat Grant Holloway alive. That night, Caroline sat on Marcy's bathroom floor for hours, reading comment after comment from strangers who had decided she was worthless based on a tabloid article. The pregnant wife who was not good enough. The inconvenient woman who needed to be erased. The obstacle between Grant Holloway and his perfect new life with his model girlfriend. She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the tiny flutter that might have been her imagination or might have been the beginning of life. "I am so sorry," she whispered to the child she was carrying. "I am sorry I picked the wrong father for you. I am sorry I trusted someone who turned out to be a monster. But I promise you something. I promise I will fight. I will fight until I have nothing left. And then I will fight some more. Because you deserve better than this. We deserve better than this." And Grant Holloway has no idea what is coming for him. Rebecca Lawson's office was on the 32nd floor of a building that looked like it was made entirely of glass and ambition. Caroline arrived wearing borrowed clothes from Marcy's closet, her only valuable possession the folder of documents she had gathered over the past 3 days. The lawyer who greeted her looked nothing like Caroline expected. Rebecca was in her mid-40s, with silver-streaked dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they saw. She wore a perfectly tailored gray suit and no jewelry except for a simple watch. She did not smile when Caroline entered. She did not offer comfort or sympathy. She simply gestured to a chair and said, "Tell me everything." Caroline told her the affair, the divorce papers, the forged signatures, the stolen accounts, the hidden medical condition, the public humiliation campaign, everything. When she finished, Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. "How far along are you?" she finally asked. 8 weeks, maybe 9 now. "And you want to fight for custody, for assets, for everything." Caroline nodded. "I want to fight for justice. Grant stole my money. He forged my signature. He hid medical information from me. And now he is trying to convince the world I am crazy so that when I lose everything, people will think I deserved it." Rebecca leaned forward, her expression intense. "Let me be clear about what you are facing. You are broke. You are pregnant. Your husband is currently winning like a public relations war against you. You have maybe 30 days before he convinces a judge to freeze you out entirely." "So what do I do?" Caroline asked. Rebecca's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "You stop being a victim. You start being a threat." She pulled out a legal pad and began writing. First, documentation. Every text, email, screenshot, build a timeline of his behavior. Second, witnesses. Anyone who saw him being controlling, lying, cheating. His assistant, your friends, anyone. Third, financial forensics. She looked up. "You were an accountant, correct? Forensic accountant. At Miller and Associates. Then you know how to find hidden money. Grant did not just steal from you. Men like him always have offshore accounts. Shell companies, hidden assets. Find them. Fourth, medical autonomy. Get a new doctor. Document the hidden diagnosis. Build a case for medical coercion." Caroline nodded, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "And what about the public relations war?" she asked. "He is controlling the narrative." Rebecca's expression hardened. "For now. But narratives can change. The truth has a way of surfacing. Our job is to make sure that when it does, Grant Holloway drowns in it." She slid a document across the desk. "I am taking your case pro bono. Sign here." Caroline stared at her. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "5 years ago, I represented a client against Holloway Ventures. We had evidence of fraud, manipulation, coercion. We should have won, but Grant buried the evidence, paid off witnesses. My client lost everything." She paused. "I have been waiting for another chance to take him down. You are that chance." Caroline signed the document. 2 weeks later, things began to shift. Caroline had moved into the spare bedroom of Marcy's small Brooklyn apartment. Every night, after Marcy went to bed, Caroline sat at the kitchen table with printouts, bank statements, and her laptop. "Something is wrong with these numbers," she muttered one night. Marcy wandered in for water and peered over her shoulder. "Besides the part where your husband stole all of them?" "No, look." Caroline pointed to a spreadsheet. Holloway Ventures reported $80 million in assets last quarter, but these bank transfers show money moving to offshore accounts in the Caymans. A lot of money. Is that illegal if he is defrauding investors? Extremely. Caroline kept digging, and the deeper she went, the more she found. Shell companies with no clear purpose. Wire transfers to accounts in jurisdictions with no extradition treaties. Financial structures that made no sense unless someone was hiding something massive. Grant was not just a cheating husband, he was potentially a criminal. Meanwhile, Rebecca Lawson filed a restraining order against Grant. The judge granted it temporarily. Grant could not contact Caroline directly. He could not come near her. The news coverage shifted slightly. Some outlets picked up the story. Holloway wife fights back, files protective order. Some comments turned sympathetic. Maybe she is not crazy after all. Wait, he filed for divorce while she was pregnant? That is messed up. For the first time in weeks, Caroline allowed herself to feel something like hope. "Maybe I can actually do this," she told Marcy one evening. Marcy hugged her tight. "Of course you can. You are the scariest smart person I know." But the hope was premature. 3 days later, Grant's lawyers produced a document that changed everything. It was a post-nuptial agreement, supposedly signed by Caroline 18 months ago. The document stated that she waived rights to all marital assets in case of divorce. She agreed to binding arbitration rather than court proceedings, and most devastatingly, she acknowledged having pre-existing mental health conditions that might affect her judgment. "I never signed this," Caroline told Rebecca, her voice shaking. "I have never seen this document in my life." Rebecca examined it carefully. "It has your signature, notarized. It is forged. Just like the bank documents, I believe you. But proving forgery takes time we do not have. Because Grant was not done. The next day, he filed an emergency custody motion. Not for children who had been born, for the children Caroline was carrying. His argument was devastating. Caroline was mentally unstable. Her cardiac condition made her medically unfit. He had signed statements from 2 psychiatrists claiming she showed signs of paranoid delusion. "I have never met these psychiatrists," Caroline told the judge at the emergency hearing. "These evaluations are completely fabricated." The judge, an older man who clearly knew Grant from the country club circuit, looked skeptical. "These are serious accusations, Mrs. Holloway." Grant's lawyer, Howard Vance, stood smoothly. "Your Honor, we would like to submit additional evidence of Mrs. Holloway's erratic behavior." He played security footage from the penthouse. Caroline crying, Caroline throwing a plate against the wall. Caroline talking to herself while pacing. What the footage did not show was context. The plate she threw was after reading the 47th hateful comment about herself online. The talking to herself was actually leaving a voicemail for Marcy. Out of context, it looked exactly like what Grant claimed. An unstable woman spiraling out of control. Rebecca grabbed Caroline's arm before she could respond. "Do not react," she whispered. "Do not give them more footage." The judge ordered a custody evaluation. A court-appointed stranger would now determine whether Caroline was fit to raise her own children. As Caroline left the courthouse, shell-shocked and trembling, a processes server handed her papers. Grant was suing her for defamation, for sharing screenshots of his affair with her lawyer. "I am heartbroken," Grant told the reporters gathered outside. "I just want what is best for my children, but I will not let lies destroy my reputation." Naomi Laurent stood beside him, perfect and beautiful and smug, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Caroline stood alone on the courthouse steps, surrounded by flashing cameras and shouted questions, and felt something inside her crack. Everything she had built in the past 2 weeks, the evidence, the restraining order, the tiny shred of hope, was crumbling. Grant was winning. Again. Still, always. And she did not know how to stop him. But somewhere in Manhattan, in a glass tower overlooking Central Park, a man was reading about the Holloway divorce case with great interest. Sebastian Pierce had been waiting 5 years for someone to finally bring Grant Holloway to justice, and he had just found his opportunity. Caroline spent 3 days after the custody hearing in a fog of despair. She barely ate. She barely slept. She sat on Marcy's couch, staring at the wall, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. On the 4th day, Marcy sat down beside her with a cup of tea and a determined expression. Okay, pity party is over. I am not having a pity party. I am processing. You have been processing on my couch for 72 hours. You are going to grow mold. Caroline almost smiled despite everything. How are you a paralegal? You have zero empathy. Empathy does not win custody cases. Marcy's voice softened. Evidence does. And you, Caroline Mercer, are the best evidence gatherer I have ever met. So stop wallowing and start digging. Caroline looked at her friend, at the fierce loyalty in her eyes. Digging into what? Grant has an army of lawyers. He has forged documents. He has psychiatrists on his payroll. What can I possibly find that will matter? Marcy pulled out her laptop. Remember those offshore accounts you found? The shell companies? Caroline nodded slowly. I have been doing some research, Marcy continued. Holloway Ventures has been involved in some questionable deals over the years. And 5 years ago, there was a lawsuit. A foundation claimed Grant defrauded them out of $12 million. Caroline sat up straighter. What happened? The case was dismissed. Grant buried the evidence, paid off witnesses, the usual. But the foundation? The one that lost, it was called the Pierce Foundation. Pierce. Why does that name sound familiar? Because Sebastian Pierce is one of the richest men in America. Marcy turned the laptop toward Caroline. Tech billionaire. Sold his AI company for $2 billion. And he has spent the last 5 years trying to prove Grant Holloway is a fraud. Caroline stared at the screen. Sebastian Pierce looked nothing like Grant. Where Grant was polished and performative, Pierce seemed almost uncomfortable in the photos, as if he resented every camera pointed at him. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that seemed to see through everything. He has been waiting for evidence, Marcy said. Evidence he could never find. But you found it. Those shell companies. Those offshore transfers. If any of them connect to the Pierce Foundation case, Caroline's accountant brain clicked into gear. If I can prove Grant used the same methods to defraud the Pierce Foundation that he used on me, yeah, then you have a pattern. A criminal pattern. And Sebastian Pierce has the resources to help you prove it. Caroline was already reaching for her own laptop. I need to look at those shell companies again. One of them was called Meridian Holdings. The transfers went through the Caymans, but they originated somewhere else. If I can trace them back. For the next 6 hours, Caroline did what she had always done best. She followed the money, and the money led somewhere very interesting. The meeting with Sebastian Pierce happened 3 days later. Caroline had sent a carefully worded email through his foundation's general contact form, expecting nothing. Men like Sebastian Pierce did not meet with random pregnant women going through messy divorces, but within 12 hours, she received a response. Pierce's assistant asked for a summary of her findings. Caroline sent it. 2 hours later, she had an appointment. His office was in a glass tower in Midtown, The kind of building where the elevators did not have buttons for certain floors because if you did not already know where you were going, you did not belong there. Caroline rode the elevator to the 48th floor, clutching her folder of evidence and trying not to throw up from nerves and morning sickness combined. Sebastian Pierce's office was surprisingly sparse. No art on the walls, no personal photographs, just floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and a massive desk covered in papers. The man himself stood when she entered. Tall, intense, not handsome exactly, but compelling in a way that had nothing to do with conventional attractiveness. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "sit down, tell me what you found. No small talk, no pleasantries." Caroline appreciated that. She spread her documents across his desk. 3 years ago, your foundation filed a lawsuit against Holloway Ventures claiming fraud. You alleged that Grant diverted $12 million in investment funds to personal accounts. Sebastian nodded, his expression unreadable. We could not prove the connection. The money disappeared into a maze of shell companies. I found the maze. Caroline pointed to a diagram she had created. Meridian Holdings received the funds from Holloway Ventures. But Meridian is not a real company. It is a shell. The beneficial owner is hidden behind 3 layers of offshore registration. She paused. The same structure was used to steal my personal assets. The exact same structure. Sebastian was very still. You found the Meridian Holdings connection. My forensic team missed that for 3 years. I was good at my job. Before I gave it up. His eyes met hers. Why did you give it up? Caroline laughed bitterly. Because I believed my husband when he said I did not need to work, that he would take care of everything. And now? Now I take care of myself. Something shifted in Sebastian's expression. Not pity, not sympathy. Something more like respect. What do you want from me, Mrs. Holloway? Caroline sat up straighter. I am not here for charity, Mr. Pierce. I am here because I think my husband stole from you, and I think together we can prove it. Sebastian leaned back in his chair. My lawyers have spent 5 years and several million dollars trying to build a case against Grant Holloway. They found nothing. Your lawyers were looking for documents and witnesses. I am looking for patterns. Numbers do not lie, Mr. Pierce. And Grant made the same mistakes with me that he made with you. The same shell companies, the same offshore structures, the same forged signatures. Forged signatures? Caroline explained about the bank documents, the post-nuptial agreement, the medical consent forms. As she spoke, Sebastian's expression grew darker. He forged medical documents to hide information about your health? He hid a heart condition from me for 2 years, and when I found out I was pregnant, he tried to use it against me, to prove I was unfit. Sebastian stood abruptly and walked to the window. Grant Holloway destroyed my family's foundation, cost jobs, ruined retirement funds. People I cared about lost everything, because I could not prove what he did. His voice was tight with controlled anger. I thought I would never have another chance. You have one now, but I need your help. I need resources. Forensic accountants who can dig deeper than I can alone. Lawyers who can move faster than Grant's team. And protection. Because when Grant realizes what I am doing, he will come for me. Sebastian turned to face her. Why should I trust you? Because I have nothing left to lose. Caroline's voice did not waver. My husband took my money, my reputation, my sense of safety. He is trying to take my children before they are even born. I have exactly 2 things left. My brain and my evidence. I am not here to ask for rescue, Mr. Pierce. I am here to make a deal. Sebastian studied her for a long moment. Then something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? A victim looking for a savior. Caroline stood up. I do not need a savior. I need a partner. Are you in or not? Sebastian extended his hand. I am in. They shook on it. And for the first time in weeks, Caroline felt like she might actually survive this. But neither of them knew that Grant Holloway had already begun his next move, a move that would nearly destroy everything they were building together. For 2 weeks, everything seemed to be working. Sebastian's forensic team dug into Meridian Holdings and found connections that stretched across 3 continents. Grant had not just defrauded the Pierce Foundation, he had been running variations of the same scheme for years. Pension funds, private investors, even a children's hospital in Connecticut. The total estimated fraud was $47 million. Rebecca Lawson filed an emergency motion with the court, presenting evidence that the post-nuptial agreement Grant claimed Caroline signed was forged. Handwriting experts confirmed inconsistencies. The notary who allegedly witnessed the signature had no record of the appointment. More importantly, the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI had opened an investigation into Holloway Ventures. The media narrative began to shift. Holloway Ventures, under federal investigation. The headlines screamed, CEO accused of massive fraud scheme. Did Grant Holloway forge his wife's signature? For the first time, the comment sections were on Caroline's side. I knew that guy was too smooth to be real. Poor woman, he was gaslighting her the whole time. Throw him in jail. Caroline watched the news from Sebastian's office, where she had been working 18-hour days alongside his team. We got him, she said, hardly believing the words. Sebastian stood beside her, his expression cautious. Not yet. Men like Grant do not surrender. They escalate. He was right. The next morning, Grant Holloway held a press conference on the steps of the Manhattan courthouse. Naomi Laurent was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Grant stood alone, looking appropriately devastated. I am here to address the vicious lies being spread about me and my company, he said into the microphone. My wife Caroline is not the victim she claims to be. She is part of a coordinated attack against me by Sebastian Pierce, a man who has been trying to destroy my business for years. Reporters shouted questions. Are you saying your wife is working with Pierce? Grant nodded solemnly. I have evidence that Caroline and Sebastian Pierce began their affair months before our separation. Their so-called investigation is nothing but revenge disguised as justice. He held up a folder of photographs. Paparazzi shots of Caroline entering Sebastian's building, photos of them standing near each other that had been cropped and edited to look intimate. Furthermore, Grant continued, I have serious concerns about the paternity of the children my wife claims are mine. Given her relationship with Mr. Pierce, I am demanding prenatal DNA testing. The press erupted. Caroline watched from Sebastian's office, her stomach dropping. He is lying. We never... I know. Sebastian's voice was tight. But it does not matter. He has planted the seed. Now everyone will wonder. Rebecca Lawson called within the hour. Grant's lawyers filed a motion demanding prenatal DNA testing for the babies. They are claiming paternity fraud. Can they force it? Caroline asked, her hand instinctively covering her belly. Not easily. The testing carries risks for triplets. She paused. Wait. Did you say triplets? Caroline had found out the week before. Her last ultrasound showed not 1 baby, but 3. The news had been overwhelming in the midst of everything else. Yes, triplets. Rebecca exhaled slowly. That changes the risk calculation significantly. No judge will order invasive testing on a high-risk triplet pregnancy. But Grant's team will drag this out, create doubt, poison the narrative. Caroline closed her eyes. So even though I have proof he forged documents, proof he committed fraud, proof he hid my medical condition, He can still win by making everyone think I cheated on him? Welcome to divorce court, Rebecca said grimly. Truth does not always win. Perception does. That night, Caroline sat alone in the guest room at Marcy's apartment, staring at the ceiling. Her brief hope had shattered. Grant was not just fighting her anymore. He was fighting the truth itself, and he was very, very good at it. Marcy knocked softly and entered with a cup of tea. How are you holding up? Caroline laughed bitterly. I am pregnant with triplets. My husband is accusing me of having an affair with a man I met 3 weeks ago. Half the internet thinks I'm a lying gold digger, and I have a heart condition that might complicate everything. So, great. I am doing great. Marcy sat beside her on the bed. For what it is worth, I believe you. I know. And honestly, right now, that is the only thing keeping me going. Marcy was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Something I have never told anyone? Caroline looked at her friend. Of course, when I was 23, I got pregnant. By my college boyfriend. He was rich, connected, his family owned half of Connecticut. When I told him, he did exactly what Grant is doing to you. He denied the baby was his. He told everyone I was a liar. His family threatened to destroy me if I went public. What did you do? Marcy's expression hardened. I believed them. I believed that I was powerless, that the truth did not matter, that people like them always won. So I walked away. I let them pay me off. I never told anyone the truth. And now I am a paralegal who spends her days watching women go through exactly what I went through. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever had the chance to help someone fight back, I would take it. She squeezed Caroline's hand. You are not alone, and you are not powerless. Grant Holloway has no idea what he is dealing with. Caroline felt tears slip down her cheeks. What if I lose? Then you lose fighting, which is better than losing because you gave up. Caroline wiped her eyes. When did you get so wise? Marcy grinned. I have always been wise. You were just too busy with your spreadsheets to notice. For the first time in days, Caroline laughed. But the laughter died quickly when her phone buzzed with a news alert. She looked at the screen and felt her blood turn to ice. Grant Holloway demands full custody, claims ex-wife endangered unborn children. Grant was no longer content to destroy her reputation. Now he was coming for her babies. And Caroline knew, with terrible certainty, that the real fight had just begun. The custody hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to prove that Grant Holloway was a fraud, a forger, and a liar. 3 weeks to save Caroline's children. Sebastian's team worked around the clock. Forensic accountants traced money through 17 different accounts. Private investigators dug into Grant's past, and slowly a picture began to emerge that was even darker than anyone had imagined. We found something, Sebastian told Caroline one evening. His expression was troubled. About Grant's previous relationships. Caroline looked up from her laptop. What kind of something? Before you, Grant was engaged to a woman named Claire Jennings. They were together for 2 years. She was a marketing executive, successful, independent. Then suddenly, she disappeared. Disappeared? Moved to Oregon under a different name, changed her career, erased her entire past. Do we know why? Sebastian slid a document across the table. She filed a police report 3 days before she vanished. Grant had been stalking her, threatening her. She claimed he forged documents to destroy her credit. That he had psychiatrists willing to call her unstable. Caroline felt sick. It is the same pattern, exactly the same. There is more. Sebastian's voice was heavy. Claire was not the first. There was another woman before her, an assistant at Holloway Ventures who accused Grant of harassment. She withdrew her complaint after her apartment was broken into and all her evidence was stolen. She moved to California and has not spoken publicly since. How many women has he done this to? At least 3 that we know of. Probably more. Carolyn stood up abruptly, needing to move. So Grant has been doing this for years, targeting women, isolating them, destroying them when they become inconvenient. And no one has ever stopped him? No one has ever had enough evidence. Sebastian met her eyes, until now. You are the first person who kept records, who fought back in time, who had the skills to see through his financial games. It does not feel like enough. It will be. Sebastian's voice was certain. We are going to prove everything. And when we do, Grant Holloway will never hurt anyone again. Caroline wanted to believe him, but something still nagged at her. Why are you doing this? Really? Sebastian was quiet for a long moment. When Grant defrauded my foundation, he did not just take money. He took my father's legacy. My father built that foundation to help underprivileged kids access technology education. He died believing it would continue forever. Grant destroyed everything my father built, used it to fund his lifestyle, while kids who should have had opportunities got nothing. I am sorry. Sebastian shook his head. I do not want sympathy. I want justice for my father, for Claire Jennings, for all the women he has hurt, and for you. Their eyes met. Something passed between them, not romance, not attraction, something deeper, understanding, shared purpose, the recognition of someone who had also been destroyed by Grant Holloway and refused to stay down. We make a good team, Caroline said quietly. We do. Sebastian almost smiled. Now let us finish what we started. The breakthrough came 5 days before the custody hearing. Caroline was reviewing bank records for the 100th time when she noticed something odd. A transfer from one of Grant's shell companies to an account she had not seen before. The account was in Naomi Laurent's name. Sebastian, she called. Come look at this. He leaned over her shoulder. Grant has been paying Naomi. A lot. For months before their relationship went public. Caroline followed the trail further. It is not gifts or spending money. Look at the payment schedule. Monthly transfers, fixed amounts. It looks like a salary. Sebastian's expression sharpened. He was paying her to be in a relationship with him, or paying her to help him with something else. They dug deeper, and what they found was worse than anyone imagined. Naomi Laurent was not just Grant's girlfriend. She was his employee. Her job, according to internal memos that had been improperly stored on a shared server, was to help Grant document Caroline's instability. For months before the divorce, Naomi had been gathering ammunition. She had befriended one of Caroline's acquaintances to get access to personal information. She had helped stage the paparazzi photos that made Caroline look unstable. She had even suggested the psychiatrists who would later claim Caroline was mentally unfit. The affair was not a romance. It was an operation, and Naomi had been part of it from the beginning. Caroline stared at the evidence, her mind reeling. He planned everything, for months, maybe years. Sebastian nodded grimly. Grant does not make impulsive decisions. He engineers outcomes. You were never going to have a fair divorce. He was always going to destroy you. The only question was when. So what do? We use this. Sebastian's voice was hard. We show the court that Grant did not just cheat on you. He hired someone to systematically dismantle your life. That is not a custody dispute. That is a criminal conspiracy. Rebecca Lawson agreed. This changes everything, she said when they showed her the evidence. If we can prove Grant hired Naomi, specifically to help destroy Caroline, it demonstrates premeditation, pattern behavior, malice. Will it be enough to stop the custody motion? Rebecca smiled grimly. It will be enough to bury him. But 2 days before the hearing, everything went wrong again. Caroline was leaving Sebastian's office late at night when she felt a sharp pain across her abdomen. She grabbed the wall, gasping, Sebastian was beside her instantly. What is wrong? I do not know. It hurts. It really hurts. He did not hesitate. He called an ambulance. At the hospital, Dr. James Morrison, a calm-faced man with steady hands, delivered news that made Caroline's blood run cold. You are in preterm labor at 28 weeks. 28 weeks. Too early. Far too early. We are going to do everything we can to stop it, the doctor continued. But you need to understand, triplets at 28 weeks is extremely high risk. You need to be prepared for every possibility. Caroline lay in the hospital bed, alone and terrified. Marcy was on her way. Rebecca was preparing for the hearing. Sebastian was pacing the hallway because the nurses would not let him into her room, and Caroline was possibly about to lose everything. Please, she whispered to the babies she had not yet met. Please hold on. Just a little longer. We are so close. The contractions continued. And somewhere across the city, Grant Holloway was preparing his final attack. The hospital monitors beeped steadily as Caroline lay in the bed, trying to stay calm, despite the contractions rippling through her body. The doctors had managed to slow the labor with medication, but she was on strict bed rest, no stress, no movement, no court appearances, which meant she could not attend her own custody hearing. Rebecca Lawson assured her it did not matter. I have enough evidence to bury Grant without you there. Rest. Focus on those babies. But Caroline could not rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Grant's smug face. She saw Naomi's perfect smile. She saw everything she had built crumbling. Marcy stayed with her around the clock, feeding her terrible hospital food and reading trashy magazines out loud to distract her. Listen to this, Marcy said one afternoon. Hollywood heartbreak. Why men cheat. Number one reason, they are garbage humans. That is not what it says. It should. Despite everything, Caroline laughed. Then there was a knock at the door. She expected a nurse. Instead, Naomi Laurent walked in. Caroline's heart rate spiked immediately. The monitors started beeping alarms. Easy, Naomi said quickly. I am not here to hurt you. Marcy was already on her feet. Security! Someone call security. Wait. Naomi's voice cracked. Please. I need to tell her something. Caroline studied the woman who had helped destroy her life. Naomi looked different, thinner, paler, and there was a bruise on her wrist she was trying to hide beneath her sleeve. 2 minutes, Caroline said. Then you leave. Marcy looked incredulous but stepped back. Naomi moved closer, glancing nervously at the door. Grant thinks I am at a spa. I do not have much time. Why are you here? Because he is going to kill me. Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. And probably you too. Caroline felt ice spread through her veins. What are you talking about? Naomi's composure shattered. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I thought I knew what I was getting into. He paid me. A lot. All I had to do was date him publicly, help him look good during the divorce. I did not know he was going to... She stopped. I did not know he was a monster. What changed? He started hitting me. When I said I wanted out, he showed me files. On women before me. Before you. 2 of them disappeared, Caroline. Not moved away. Disappeared. No one ever found them. Caroline remembered what Sebastian's investigators had found. Claire Jennings in Oregon, the assistant in California. But 2 women who disappeared entirely? I do not believe you. Naomi pulled out a USB drive. Then believe this. It is everything. His passwords, his offshore accounts, the money he has been moving, and something else. She paused. Something about your medical files. What about my medical files? Naomi swallowed hard. He did not just hide your heart condition. He forged consent forms, documents saying you agreed to terminate the pregnancy if complications arose. Caroline stopped breathing. He planned to kill my babies? He never wanted them. When he found out you were carrying triplets, Naomi shook her head. He told me it was inconvenient, that 3 children would be too complicated for the narrative he was building. The monitors screamed as Caroline's heart rate skyrocketed. Nurses rushed in. "You need to leave," one of them told Naomi firmly. "Now." Naomi pressed the USB drive into Caroline's hand. "Use it, destroy him, and then run somewhere he can never find you." She was gone before Caroline could respond. The medical team worked to stabilize Caroline while Marcy called Sebastian and Rebecca. Within an hour, Sebastian's forensic team was analyzing the USB drive's contents, and what they found was damning beyond anything they had imagined. Grant had been planning Caroline's destruction for over 2 years. He had contingency documents for every scenario, forged consent forms for pregnancy termination, fake psychiatric evaluations, even drafted press releases explaining her suicide, in case he needed to make her disappear entirely. "This is not just fraud," Rebecca said, her face pale. "This is conspiracy to commit murder. Can we prove it?" Sebastian nodded slowly. "We have the documents, we have the trail, and we have Naomi as a witness if she is willing to testify." "Will she?" Caroline looked at the USB drive. "She is more scared of Grant than she is of prison. We might be able to convince her." The custody hearing was postponed due to Caroline's medical emergency, but Grant did not sit idle. The next morning, the news exploded. Grant Holloway files for emergency custody, claims ex-wife mentally unstable and physically unfit. He was using her hospitalization against her, claiming her medical crisis proved she could not carry the babies safely, demanding the court appoint him as guardian of the unborn children. "He wants to take them from me before they are even born," Caroline said, staring at the news on her phone. "He actually thinks he can do that." "He cannot," Rebecca said firmly. "Not with the evidence we have now." But Grant had one more move. That evening, FBI agents arrived at the hospital, not to arrest Grant, to question Caroline. "Mrs. Holloway," the lead agent said, "we need to ask you about your relationship with Sebastian Pierce." "My relationship?" "We have received information suggesting that you and Mr. Pierce may have conspired to fabricate evidence against your husband." Caroline stared at them. "That is insane. We have recordings, phone calls between you and Mr. Pierce, discussing how to frame Grant Holloway for fraud he did not commit." The recordings were fake. Caroline knew it immediately. Grant had used AI or hired someone to create them, but proving that would take time she did not have. "I want my lawyer," she said. The agents nodded. "Of course, but Mrs. Holloway, you should know. If these allegations are proven, you could face federal conspiracy charges." They left. Caroline sat in her hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and crushing despair. Grant was not just trying to win anymore. He was trying to put her in prison, and he was close to succeeding. Then her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Do not give up. I am coming." Below the message was a photo, a document, an FBI report on Grant Holloway. Someone inside the investigation was on her side, and for the first time in days, Caroline felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The 48 hours that followed were the most intense of Caroline's life. While she lay in the hospital, fighting to keep her babies safe, Sebastian and Rebecca assembled an army. Forensic accountants worked through the night tracing Grant's financial crimes. Private investigators tracked down Claire Jennings in Oregon and convinced her to testify. Legal experts analyzed the forged documents and prepared expert testimony. And somewhere in the FBI, a whistleblower was leaking information proving that Grant had fabricated the recordings used to accuse Caroline of conspiracy. I need to be there, Caroline told Dr. Morrison. At the hearing. I need to testify. The doctor shook his head. You are 30 weeks pregnant with triplets. Your blood pressure is unstable. Getting out of this bed could trigger labor. Then I testify. From the bed, Dr. Morrison stared at her. Mrs. Holloway, that is highly irregular. My husband is trying to steal my children before they are born. She met his eyes. Nothing about this situation is regular. After a long moment, the doctor nodded. I will make some calls. The emergency hearing happened via video link. Caroline lay in her hospital bed, propped up by pillows, monitors beeping softly around her. On the screen, she could see the courtroom. Judge Patricia Williams presiding. Rebecca Lawson at the plaintiff's table. Grant Holloway and his team at the defendant's table. Grant looked confident, smug, like a man who had never lost anything in his life. That was about to change. The evidence was presented methodically. The forged bank documents, the shell companies, the $47 million in fraud, the fake psychiatric evaluations, the hired girlfriend, the forged medical consent forms. With each piece of evidence, Grant's expression shifted, confidence to concern to barely controlled panic. Claire Jennings testified via video from Oregon, her voice steady despite years of fear. Grant Holloway did to me exactly what he is doing to Caroline. He isolated me, controlled my finances. When I tried to leave, he destroyed my credit, my reputation, my career. I had to disappear just to survive. Margaret Sullivan, the former assistant, testified as well. He threatened me, stalked me. When I reported him to HR, he had someone break into my apartment and steal my evidence. I was too afraid to fight back, but I am not afraid anymore. Then came Naomi. She appeared on the video screen, clearly terrified, but resolute. I was paid to help Grant destroy his wife. I did not understand what I was doing at first, but when I tried to leave, he showed me what he had done to other women. Women who disappeared. He told me I would disappear too if I talked. She paused. But I am talking now, because no one else should have to go through what Caroline went through, what I went through. The courtroom was silent. Finally, it was Caroline's turn. Mrs. Holloway, Rebecca said gently, can you tell the court what the past 6 months have been like? Caroline looked into the camera, at the judge, at Grant. 6 months ago, I was a wife. I was excited to tell my husband I was pregnant. Instead, he served me divorce papers, terminated my health insurance, and stole every dollar I had. She continued, her voice steady despite the monitors beeping around her. For months, I thought I was going crazy. The things Grant said about me, the evidence he produced, the doctors who claimed I was unstable. I started to believe maybe I was the problem. She paused. But I was not crazy. I was targeted by a man who had done this before, to multiple women, women who lost everything because no one believed them. She looked directly at Grant. I almost lost everything too. My money, my reputation, my sanity, but I did not lose my evidence. I did not lose my determination, and I did not lose my children. Grant's face was white. I am not here for revenge, Caroline continued. I am here because no one should have to fight this hard just to exist, just to keep their children, just to be believed. Judge Williams was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds the following. The custody motion filed by Grant Holloway is denied. All claims against Caroline Holloway are dismissed. Furthermore, this court recommends that all evidence be forwarded to federal authorities for criminal investigation. She looked at Grant. Mr. Holloway, I strongly suggest you retain an excellent criminal attorney. You are going to need one. Grant stood abruptly. This is a setup, a conspiracy. I am being framed. Security moved toward him. I will destroy all of you, Grant shouted. This is not over. Do you hear me? This is not over. He was still shouting as they escorted him from the courtroom. Caroline watched through her hospital monitor, and for the first time in 6 months, she allowed herself to cry. "It is over," Rebecca said softly through the video link. "You won." Caroline shook her head. "Not yet. Not until he is behind bars." Rebecca smiled. "That is coming. I promise you, that is coming." 3 hours later, Caroline went into labor. It was fast and terrifying. Dr. Morrison and a team of specialists worked frantically as Caroline pushed through waves of pain unlike anything she had experienced. "Baby A," Morrison called out. "A boy. Healthy, crying. A tiny, perfect cry. Baby B, another boy. Healthy, another cry. Baby C, a girl. She is small. We need neonatal." Caroline's heart stopped, but then she heard it. A third cry. Smaller, weaker, but they're all three babies, Morrison said. Alive, strong. Caroline sobbed with relief. "Can I see them?" They were placed in her arms one by one. Three tiny faces. Three sets of eyes, blinking in the harsh hospital light. Three miracles. "Hi," she whispered. "I am your mom. I have been waiting for you." The door opened. Marcy rushed in, followed by Sebastian. "You did it," Marcy said, tears streaming down her face. "You actually did it." Sebastian stood at the foot of the bed, his usual composure cracked by emotion. "They are beautiful," he said quietly. Caroline looked at him, at this man who had been her partner in the darkest fight of her life, who had believed her when no one else did. "Thank you," she said. "For everything," Sebastian nodded. Then he said something that surprised her. Grant was arrested at the airport. He was trying to flee to Dubai. Caroline closed her eyes. "It is really over," she whispered. "It is really over." The trial of Grant Holloway was the most watched legal proceeding of the year. He faced 17 counts of wire fraud, investor fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. But the charges that captured public attention were different. Conspiracy to violate medical privacy, forgery, stalking, and, most devastatingly, conspiracy to commit harm against his unborn children. The forged medical consent forms, the ones that would have allowed termination of Caroline's pregnancy without her knowledge, were entered into evidence. The courtroom gasped. Caroline testified on the third day of the trial. She walked into the courtroom on her own 2 feet, 3 months after giving birth. She had lost weight. She had gained strength, and she had a clarity in her eyes that startled everyone who had known her before. "Mrs. Holloway," the prosecutor said, "can you describe your state of mind when you discovered what your husband had planned?" Caroline looked at the jury. "For a long time, I was afraid that no one would believe me, afraid that I was going crazy, afraid that Grant would take my children before they were even born. But then I realized something. Fear was exactly what he wanted. He had built his entire empire on other people's fear. He counted on women being too scared to fight back, too isolated to find help, too broken to prove the truth." She paused. "I refuse to be broken. And I hope that any woman listening to this, any woman who has been isolated or controlled or made to feel crazy by someone who claims to love her, knows that she is not alone. The truth matters. Evidence matters. And there are people who will believe you if you just keep fighting." Grant Holloway was found guilty on all 17 counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. 15 years in federal prison. $47 million in restitution. Permanent restraining order, prohibition from any contact with Caroline or the children. As he was led away in handcuffs, Grant passed within feet of Caroline. He leaned close, his voice a venomous whisper. "This is not over." Caroline did not flinch. She met his eyes calmly. "Yes, it is." The doors closed behind him. He was gone. In the months that followed, Caroline rebuilt her life piece by piece. She moved to Connecticut, to a house with a big backyard and a view of the hills. Not extravagant, not a mansion, just home. Marcy visited every weekend, spoiling the triplets with toys and questionable advice. "You need to teach these kids about the justice system," she said one afternoon, bouncing Thomas on her knee while Emily grabbed her hair and James tried to eat her phone. "They are 8 months old, never too early to start." Caroline laughed. She had started her own forensic accounting firm, specializing in divorce fraud cases. Women came to her from across the country, women who had been told they were crazy, women whose husbands had hidden assets and forged documents, women who needed someone who understood. "I know what you are going through," Caroline told each of them, "and I know it feels impossible, but it is not. We are going to find the truth. Together." Sebastian remained part of her life, but carefully, respectfully. He came to Connecticut once a month, always with thoughtful gifts for the children and sharp insights about her business. They did not rush anything. Caroline needed time to heal. Sebastian understood that. But one evening, almost 2 years after the trial, something shifted. They were sitting on Caroline's porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The triplets were asleep inside. The house was quiet. "I have something for you," Sebastian said. He pulled out a small box. Caroline's breath caught. "It is not what you think," he said quickly. "Well, maybe it is partly what you think." He opened the box. Inside was a key. "What is this?" "Office space, downtown, for your firm, the building I mentioned last month." "Sebastian, I cannot accept that." "It is not charity." Sebastian's voice was steady. "It is investment. You are the best forensic accountant I have ever met, and selfishly, I want you to succeed." Caroline looked at the key, then at him. "Is this your way of asking me out without actually asking me out?" He almost smiled. "I was thinking dinner first. Then we could discuss future investments." Caroline laughed. "That is the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me, and also the nerdiest." "I contain multitudes," Sebastian said. And suddenly, Caroline knew. She had spent years with a man who controlled her, diminished her, tried to erase her. Sebastian was different. He saw her strength and wanted to support it, not suppress it. He respected her independence. He waited until she was ready. "Ask me," she said. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "Ask me out, properly." He set down the key and took her hand. "Caroline Mercer, would you like to have dinner with me? As something more than business partners?" She smiled. "Yes, I would like that very much." It was not a fairy tale ending. Caroline did not need rescue or completion. She had rescued herself. She had built her own life, but now she had a partner who wanted to walk beside her. And that was better than any fairy tale. 2 years after their first official date, Sebastian Pierce brought Caroline back to Manhattan. She did not know why. He had been mysterious for days, smiling at her questions and deflecting with jokes that were not quite funny enough to hide his nervousness. "Where are we going?" she asked as their car wound through the city streets. "You will see." The car stopped at a pier overlooking the East River. The sun was setting, casting the Manhattan skyline in gold and amber. It was the same pier where Caroline had stood, alone and terrified, 4 years earlier. The pier where she had decided to fight. "You remembered," she said softly. Sebastian took her hand. "This is where you decided to survive, not because of me. Before me, this is where you became who you are." Caroline felt tears prick her eyes. Sebastian led her to the edge of the pier, where the lights of the city sparkled against the darkening sky. Then he knelt. Caroline's heart stopped. "Caroline Mercer," Sebastian said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "you did not need a billionaire to save you. You saved yourself. You built your own life, your own business, your own future. You raised 3 incredible children. You helped countless women find justice. You are the strongest person I have ever known. He pulled out a ring. Simple, elegant, a vintage setting that looked like it had been chosen with extraordinary care. I am not offering you a rescue, he continued. I am not offering you completion. I am offering you a partner. Someone to walk beside you. Never in front, beside. Caroline looked at the ring, at Sebastian, at the skyline that had once felt like a prison and now felt like possibility. She thought about everything she had survived: Grant's betrayal, the financial devastation, the forged documents, the custody battle, the near loss of her children, the trial, the rebuilding. She had done all of it. She had fought every fight. She had won every battle that mattered. And now she could choose her future. On her own terms. Yes, she said. Sebastian slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he stood and kissed her, and Carolyn felt something she had not felt in years. Not just happiness, not just relief. Peace. The wedding was held in the backyard of their Connecticut home. 50 guests. Marcy as maid of honor. The triplets as ring bearers. Thomas, at 3 years old, dropped his ring almost immediately. Emily tried to eat hers. James declared loudly that weddings were boring. I told you to give them fake rings, Marcy whispered. They are fake rings, Caroline replied. Those cost $12. And now they are in the garden somewhere, with your hydrangeas. Caroline laughed. The ceremony was simple and perfect. Caroline wore a dress she had chosen herself. Not extravagant, not designed to impress, just beautiful. Sebastian waited at the altar with tears in his eyes. When it was time for vows, Caroline spoke from the heart. I spent years letting someone else tell my story, she said. He told me I was unstable. He told me I was worthless. He told me I could not survive without him. But he was wrong. I wrote my own story, and it is better than anything he could have imagined. She looked at Sebastian. I do not need you to complete me, but I choose you. I choose this partnership. I choose this life we are building together. Sebastian's response was equally simple. I spent years trying to prove that justice existed, that truth mattered, that bad men could be held accountable. You proved all of that, not me. You. And I am honored to spend the rest of my life supporting your work, loving your children, and walking beside you wherever you go. They exchanged rings. They kissed. The guests cheered. And Caroline Mercer Pierce started the next chapter of her life. 6 months later, Caroline was in her office, reviewing case files for a new client. Her firm had grown. She had hired 3 forensic accountants and 2 victim advocates. Women from across the country came to her for help, and she gave it freely, knowing that every case she won was a victory for everyone who had ever been told they were crazy. Her assistant Emily knocked on the door. Mrs. Pierce? Someone dropped this off. Said it was urgent. She handed Caroline a manila envelope. No return address. No postmark. Caroline frowned and opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A man in a prison jumpsuit, staring directly at the camera with cold, calculating eyes. Grant Holloway. Below the photograph was a handwritten note. Did you really think I would let you win forever? The game is not over. G. Caroline stared at the photograph for a long moment. 4 years ago, this letter would have destroyed her, would have sent her spiraling into panic and despair. But she was not that woman anymore. She picked up her phone and dialed. Rebecca, it is me. We have a problem. But do not worry. I know exactly how to handle it. She hung up and looked at the photograph one more time. Then she smiled, because Grant Holloway had made a mistake. He had reminded her that some battles never truly end, that vigilance was the price of freedom, that monsters did not stay buried unless you kept them there. And Caroline Mercer Pierce was very, very good at keeping monsters buried. She put the photograph in her desk drawer, returned to her case files, and got back to work. Outside her window, the sun was shining on a beautiful Connecticut afternoon. Her children were at preschool, learning and laughing and growing. Her husband was somewhere in the city, building a future they would share together. Her best friend was probably reading something inappropriate on the internet and getting ready to call with questionable life advice. Caroline had everything she needed, and she would protect it with everything she had, because that was who she was now. A survivor, a fighter, a mother, a wife, a woman who wrote her own story, and she was just getting started. The deeper meaning. This story carries 3 truths I hope you never forget. First, isolation is a predator's favorite tool. If someone is slowly separating you from everything that makes you strong, that is not love. That is control. Second, documentation is protection. Screenshot, record, save. In a world where powerful people can rewrite reality, evidence is everything. Third, you are never as alone as an abuser wants you to believe. Help exists, but you have to be willing to reach for it. The deepest meaning is this: you can be broken and still be unbreakable. You can lose everything and still rebuild something better. You can be underestimated by everyone and still win. Caroline did not just survive Grant Holloway. She became someone he could never destroy. And so can you. Now, if this story touched your heart, I have a small request. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every week, I share stories of women who fought back. Stories that remind you the world is full of people who refuse to stay down. Drop a comment below. Have you ever known someone like Grant? Have you ever felt trapped and found your way out? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. Share this video with a friend who is going through something hard right now. Sometimes a story is the first step toward believing that change is possible. And if you are listening in a dark moment, wondering whether fighting back is worth it, let me tell you something. It is worth it. You are worth it. And there are people in this community who believe in you, even if we have never met. Closing statement. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaning and valuable life lessons. Thank you for staying until the end.